Hi guys, I hope you can hear me, so let me know in the chat. Today I am from a different location.
Hi guys. I hope you can.
I am not feeling actually quite well. I got a cold, so please excuse any cold related noises if I accidentally sneeze or something like that. So sorry for that. Today we are going to talk about number of topics. So we are going to start with a little bit of debugging, which is part of the development environment setup. Then we are going to show you and tell you a little bit about frameworks. What does this all mean? What is the framework? How do we use it? Which one we use? What is upsource? How it's related to the framework and so on. After that, we might have a 3 minutes, 4 minutes break because lots of people ask me for the break. So hopefully, if I remember, we'll have a break after 1 hour for 3-4 minutes, very short. And then hopefully after the break, if everything goes well, I'm going to talk about object-oriented programming. Okay, so there's quite a lot to cover. And let me start with debugging. Okay, so we can debug our web applications on two sides, on the front end and on the back end. Okay, so on the front end, we can use built-in tools in our web browser. So it doesn't matter do you use Chrome or do you use Firefox or others like Edge and so on. They all have built-in tools. Okay, so there are a few things that on a page like this we can do, and this is on any page in the world. You can go to bbc.com or whatever and use the same thing. So if you right-click on this thing, you will have the option inspect and view page source. Okay, so let me do view page source quickly. So basically this is the HTML of the page, and here I typically see what for example JavaScripts are loaded on our page and so on, and I can see is everything correct in the terms of opening, closing divs and so on. So that's relatively useful. Second thing, if I go to inspect, I get this little menu, and this little menu can show me various things. So I can here inspect every single element, visual element, and see the changes on CSS. So I can say background color is, I don't know, something else, and can see how it looks when I change it. But what we want to do is check our console, check our sources, and in our sources we can see, for example, that I am loading some CSS files, and I am loading various other files here, and some of them will be JavaScript files, hopefully let's say this one, and then I can see what this JavaScript is all about. So this the debugging of the JavaScript can be done as well, because I can put the breakpoints and watch the variables, watch everything what is going on, so I get a really good insight into what is happening inside my browser, inside my application. Is everything working properly? And then of course I can see the errors. I shouldn't have any. So for example, here I have some error that some datetime picker didn't load properly, so I can go and fix that in my code. So that's number one. That's how you would typically debug the front end, so JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But if I want to debug the back end, I have a little bit of more complex thing, okay? Because when I open this page calls my Apache server. Apache server figures out, oh, this is a, let's say, PHP page, so it calls the PHP code to execute. So what I need to do is attach something to that PHP code, and so every time it executes, I can either stop execution and I can see exactly what is happening. So something has to be inside that PHP, so when it actually goes through the code, reads everything and does it. Okay, so that something is called Xdebug. Okay, so you can Google it and download it, and it has instructions how to install it on your computer. So you will install Xdebug, and once you install Xdebug, okay, you need to do a couple more things. Because just because you installed Xdebug, it doesn't mean it knows what to do with this. Okay, it doesn't know what you want to do, where you are debugging, where you want to see the output and so on. So we need to add two more things. So the first thing that we need to add is in PHP Ini. This is the setup config file of our PHP. We need to tell it, Xdebug, to actually send its instructions and listen to the instructions on a certain port. Okay, so that says somewhere in instructions of this thing, and I'll show you that in a second, those instructions. So when we add the configuration file in PHP Ini, we probably need to restart Apache so it reloads that PHP Ini so those changes take effect. And the last thing is we need to attach something that will show us the code and show us what is happening, show us the variables, and that is going to be in our VS Code. Okay, so we have a plugin that we are going to install and configure, and then if everything goes well, all those three things that we just mentioned will communicate and allow us to do the thing, which is debugging. Okay, so inside your extensions, okay, if you look for PHP, you know, pretty much the first one is PHP Ex Debug Extension. So this is the one that we are going to install on our computer. Since I already have that, the second thing is that you need to configure here this listen to Xdebug script, which basically this extension tells you how to do it. Okay, so here if you open this extension, it tells you everything what you need to do and how to install it. Okay, so install Xdebug, you can do the test file, etc, etc, etc. So this is the code that you put in your PHP Ini, and depending on your computer, depending which version of Xdebug you installed, which you can see inside of this test PHP file, you either put these two lines at the beginning or these three lines. Okay, so for Xdebug 2XX very version, the port is 9000. For some reason, you know, they changed the port in version 3. Okay, so when I go to debug and look at this script, C, because I'm using version 3 of Xdebug, the port is not 9000, it's 9003. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And then when you have all that set up, I can actually press play button here, and now you should have this type of message. Now it's listening for the Xdebug on all the code that I'm running, and it doesn't matter where the code is. So if I say index PHP, I can put a thing like breakpoint, and then when I execute this code, hopefully it will hit that breakpoint, and boom, now it's there. As you can see, I just reloaded the page and it hit this midpoint, and I can go step by step and see what is happening, monitor all the variables on the left, the call stack and all the other things. So this is very, very useful in order to debug, and it's part of our development environment. So please make sure that your Xdebug for PHP works, and that you can also access these tools inside the browser itself. Any other programming language have a very similar kind of debugging tools, and it's very similar how to set them up. Another thing what people typically do when they are debugging is either log the errors. So when the errors are happening, especially on our deployment server, we want to see what is going on there while we are not monitoring the server. So it's very good to log everything what's going on, and you can expect those logs lately. So that's a good debugging tool. Because typically your users say, well, I tried this page and didn't work. Okay, what didn't work? You need to debug it. If we have logs, then you can read and see exactly what went wrong. The next thing that we also can do is write a little text messages on our screen, okay, or on the console. Okay, so there is a thing called console log. So here in debug console, I can get messages, and the same thing if I'm debugging the front end. If I go to inspect and I go to console, I can see little messages popping out here. Now that's very good to do, you know, because it's quite handy, but you have to remember to remove those. Okay, because when that goes in production, whatever you are outputting here, let's say usernames, password, and the credit card details and stuff like that, you can log to console, but then everybody in the world can see those details, which wouldn't be very safe. So you can do that, as I say, but much better is to do the debugging the way I described it first. Any questions about debug process? If you have questions, just drop them in the chat. I'm looking at the chat all the time, so I can answer those as we go along. Okay, if you set up your debug, then your development platform and environment is set up correctly, properly. There's nothing else you need to do. So I know it was a very hard and challenging task, and lots of people struggled on various places. One of the places where they struggled was the database, importing stuff in a database. You know, they were not sure, did I import, how do I change it, and so on. So I'll quickly show that. So what I did here in extensions, I just searched for my SQL, okay? And I think this second one is the one that I added. And then basically that's these two additional icons. So when I go to the database and I connect I enter my username, password of the database and the port and so on. When I connect to it, I can see all my databases. Okay, so my admin is the database here. It does tell me that I need to reload this in order to see what's inside, but basically you can browse and see what I have in every table and what I have and then I can change and import and export the data as I go along. So these tools like this, there are many of them out there, allow me very easily to see what is going on inside the database. However, what we do have in AppSource itself, you know, we have a database editor. So if I go to my admin, utilities database, in theory, if everything works, I can see the same databases here, and then go in here and I can see all the tables, and I go in here and I can see all my users. So this is the structure, this is the data. So that's my username and all the other users that we have, and this is their encoded passwords and stuff like that. So I can easily check what's going on, edit if I need to, change, close, delete, all of that stuff. So very quick database check, you know, can be performed either this way or through this tool, or tools like Heidi, and there are many others that are free to download, and you can just open them, connect to the database and browse, see what's going on inside, make changes if required, and so on. Okay, so once we have our development environment set up, and you pulled all this code. So what you are going to do, you are going to have some files here, and you are going to have my admin. You are not going to have Blender and my venue, but I'll come to that in a moment. There are millions and millions of websites out there, okay? And pretty much all those websites have very similar features, such as login and register, okay? So for us as developers, it makes no sense to start reinventing the wheel. How does the user log in and register? Well, there is only one way. You enter your name, surname, email, whatever, you know. It's a very simple process, okay? But it takes quite a lot of time to write all that code. So it would be good if we have that code ready as some sort of bundle, okay? And there are many other things like that which are good bundles, let's say, you know. So this code works on that. This code does that, okay? So all those bundles together of very useful stuff is called framework. Okay, so people who are experienced developers or group of developers, they put their bundles that they use quite a lot together and make a framework. Okay, so the framework is not a programming language. And then it doesn't matter which programming language you're using, it's just those bundles. Sometimes they are called packages or whatever they are called, you know, but it's a, you know, some sort of number of files, code that does specific purpose. So if I want to display Google Map, I will get a bundle which does that. So, framework does help us develop software much faster, okay? But there are a few things that you need to know about frameworks, okay? So if the framework is current and active, okay, you are going to find online lots of people using it, and you will find lots of help, lots of documentation, lots of people talking about it, and more importantly, you will find lots of additional bundles, okay, more specific bundles. So if you say, hey, I want to connect to the payment service, okay, well, there is a bundle for that, you know. So you add additional bundles, you know, through some package manager and so on. So one that is very good and the top most used and most active for the PHP is called Laravel, okay. So we are using here Laravel as a framework, and another thing what I like about Laravel, and we are going to talk about this in one of the following lessons, is they are very good with concept of model view controller. Okay, so this concept is quite important, and we'll talk about it later, but Laravel supports that, so we will see that in action relatively soon. Okay, so there are many frameworks out there. There are bundles of code which does most common things for the our website. They can be extended with additional bundles, and the one that we are going to use is Laravel, and I will show you right now what is the structure of this. Okay, so this folder my admin contains the Laravel installation, but this is not installation without any additional pages and functionality. This is a fully developed Laravel application. So it's not basic Laravel, it's actually the Laravel that is made to be used. So we have number of folders here, and this is very good because this is how these folders should be organized in most cases, okay? So Laravel typically says everything that is related to public, like images that people upload like avatars, please put in a public folder. So you know that everything inside the public folder is related to your users on the real website, so they upload stuff like avatars. So that goes there, okay? Now, the next one is that I want to show you is roots, especially this file web roots, okay? So this is the file that is very important. So every single time when you ask for any URL in your browser, that gets sent to Apache. Apache sends it to PHP. But the way that Laravel and these frameworks, and typical frameworks like this, are installed, that all the requests go to the one central point. It doesn't matter what URL you put in, it all goes to the same point, which is index.php file. And index.php file does lots of things, calls lots of functions, but one of the first one that it calls is this web routes. So it checks what is the URL that you put in, okay? So if the URL is, for example, terms, then it will go here to this controller and it will call this function. And this function, it will, in this case, show you the terms and conditions page. So that's how it works. So basically, this is like a main router. So every time when you make a request, all your requests, everything that we want to do, every single link is listed here in the web routes. So that's public, that's routes. Now I'm going to talk about storage, okay? And this is one that we have to put as 777 permission, because here Apache and also Laravel and our software that we are building will write temporary files, okay? Files that it needs to function, such as cache files. So here we have some cache files, such as session files, but also, most importantly, log files. Okay, so typically, if your installation doesn't work, it will try to, Laravel is intelligent enough to check, do I have writing permission, can I write logs if something goes wrong, and it will complain about it on your screen. It will tell you, sorry, I can't write into this folder, please fix it. So I mentioned logs are very important for the debugging, so this is where you're going to find them. So this is in storage, framework logs, this folder, and everything inside has to be 777, so Apache can create new files. And you can see in this specific one, there are no errors, so it's empty, it's all good at the moment. Temp, there are some temporary files here. This is our folder that we created for our own reasons. It's not important for you to know exactly what is inside, but this one is, okay? So this is the vendor folder. For different frameworks it's called differently, you know, but it doesn't matter. These are all the bundles that make Laravel as a framework. So these are the bundles that cover with Laravel as a basic installation, and then there are all the bundles that me as a user added, me as a developer added to this. So this is all the extra code that we put in for whatever reasons we need to, okay? So for example, we are using a PDF reader, okay? So I want to display a PDF file. Laravel is not going to support that natively, you know, that's not going to be out of the box. That's not a very common feature on most websites. So what happens is that I need to install additional bundle, and once I do that, that is available in my code. So one of the files that tracks every single one of these, and what we want installed, is this one called package.json, okay? So not that package.json, composer.json, sorry, it's this one. So here we have all those bundles that it is going to install. So this one has some support for Excel and log viewer and some translation systems and Google Translate and whatever we need in the pack. So this is listed here with the versions. And once we update our software with one simple command, it will download all the necessary files that it requires for function, and will put them in the vendor folder here. So that's what the vendor folder is. Inside this bootstrap folder, which also has to be 777, this is where Laravel figures kind of itself out. Okay, so what does that mean, figures itself out? So it figures what bundles are installed and so on, what it needs to load, etc. So this is a list of files that it's going to download. There is some cache, sorry, it's this. So see, this is all those plugins and the different services that it needs to load. So as Laravel is work in progress, it changes. You know, sometimes when you add a new package or remove a package, these files needs to be updated. So Apache needs to have a permission 777 to be able to update this file, so it reads them all the time, so it knows how it's configured. Any questions? We will look at the database in great details when we go to the database lesson, but right now I just wanted to give you a quick overview how you can do that. So I think that I covered not very important files. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a little bit about more important files. So this is our config files. Okay, so every single time when I'm configuring everything in Laravel, it should be here. So typically I would put the keys for various services, which I'm not going to open, but I can open this one, so I can have something like this. This is a version number. Okay, so this is my configuration files that I put various keys, various things, how I want Laravel to work. So quite important to know that it's here, but it's also combined with this env file. An env file you have to create for every computer because it might have a different usernames and passwords. Okay, so apart from config and env, okay, we left one out. Okay, so we covered all of these except the app. This is your Laravel application itself. Okay, so everything what is going on is here. And this is where I'm going to spend most of the time explaining what is what. And also, you guys are probably going to spend most of the time developing. Okay, so this is the one that you have great interest in. So let me expand this, and then you can see that I have multiple files. All right, and then if I expand this one, I have even more files and folders. And then if I expand this one, or it's just never ending. So let me tell you what is inside the app. Okay, quite a lot. But again, I'm not going to list all of them. They are not equally important. Okay, so console will have some command line tools here if I want to use them, events if I want to register events that it listens to, exceptions where I can define custom errors that I want to log, exports is my own user one that I created, something to export the data, so that's not standard Laravel. Facades is an interesting concept because Laravel can use the full name of the class, which is sometimes quite complicated, so it has some sort of nicknames system. Helpers is another one that we created, so the way we created it is that these ones are loaded everywhere, so you can use it as a helper functions wherever you need them. In any part of the code, these ones available. Imports is like import and export, so that's again custom. Jobs, this is an interesting one because this shows us the everything that can be done in the background, okay, without the user even be logged in on the server. So we can schedule a job, so later we can do something. So we can do something, let's say, every hour or every day. For example, we can send an email every day at 8 o'clock. That's a job. Okay, so these are the background tasks which can be scheduled, don't need to be, or just executed in the background, so the user doesn't have to wait on the front end for the server to process these things. So that's the jobs. Listeners are listening to stuff that the events models. That's the interesting one. I'm going to call that later. Notifications are where we define notifications for the user, such as what emails we are sending them, and if we have those little chat bubbles or something like that. Providers is the additional configuration files where they are defined. It connects to the config, but it also typically connects to this installation of the file. So, for example, I have my helper service provider, which basically says load all the file in the helper directory, so they are always loaded. So providers are something that allow me to have things like that, across the whole website. Resources, if I have specific types of classes, which are called resources, and widgets are, again, something custom based that we developed, so we have a little widgets on the screen, so you can turn them on and off and have it's not a whole page, but it's just a little thing which can update asynchronously as things go. So like the widget for new users, widget for notifications of news, and so on. So the one that I skipped was HTTP, because inside of HTTP I have thing called controllers. Everything that happens, the whole business logic, the whole intelligence of this is in controllers. So controllers control how our applications work. So this is where our most complex code is typically, okay? So when you remember what I mentioned, the word controller is here. So if I want to, if a user wants to see the terms and conditions, it calls the guest controller, okay? So the guest controller is right there, okay? So this is the guest controller, and it calls the function in guest controller called terms. So this is, I can do Command F or Control F, terms, and find it. So this is basically gets the terms, and gives me a view. So gives me what the user needs to see. So the controllers get some stuff, whatever they need to process, and then decide what needs to be done. In this case, give the view, so give the web page with terms and conditions for the user. So controllers right here. Middleware is some sort of controllers, but it's loaded before the controllers. It's very useful, because if I say middleware authenticate, that it means that every page user has to be logged in to see it. If I use middleware administrator, it means that not just they have to be logged in, but they have to be administrator in order to do this. How does it work? Well, we'll see that a little bit later, but middleware is very handy, okay? So this is HTTP controllers. Apart from controllers, I have models, okay? So this is my models that we have here, and one of them would be user, and this is basically our site's users, okay? So it explains to Laravel and makes it easier for us as a developer. How do we connect to the database? So how is this code that we are writing here connected to the database? So Laravel makes it very, very easy, and we'll go in great depth about that, how this is all connected and how does it work. So we'll explain that quite well. So everything that is important to us, such as users or installed apps, or who is our client and so on, members, doesn't matter, will be some sort of a model. And as I said, it's a model view controllers. So we've seen the controllers, we've seen the models. Now we need to see the last thing, which is resources, okay? So here I have a folder called resources, and inside the folder called resources, you will have a few files. One of them is language files, okay? Typically, you want your website to be available for wide audience worldwide. So it means that, if people are here from Algeria, they see it in Arabic. If people are here from Turkey, they see everything in Turkish. If they are from France, they see it in France, and so on, okay? So all the translations are managed in these files. So if you want to see an English translation, pretty much every page has its own translation file. So it's very simple. So it has like a label, and then it has the text. So that's all the translated text. But this file exists in Dutch as well. So if I go to Dutch and say users, then I have the same labels, but they are now in Dutch. So you can see that somewhere, I don't speak Dutch very well, but this is guest, this is user something or whatever. So this is where I manage all my translations, and Laravel can automatically detect where the user is from and display the website in correct language. So that's quite good. Views. Okay, this is just some views are the last most important thing. These are the pages themselves, okay? But how there are a few versions what we did here. So you will typically have views and it will list all the views, but in my version I have two themes, and then inside the themes I have the views folder. So we can move things around in Laravel if we want to add, it's not that hard if we want to reorganize it. So I have views here, but typically you should have them here in a normal Laravel installation. So we made a change because we have different themes. So we organize views in different folders. So if it's an administrator, if it's profile views and so on. So let's look at the profile. There's a profile page. And this now looks quite like HTML. So this is our HTML. This is our profile picture. So this is this view that I'm looking right there. Okay, so it's this form with all this text and so on. However, you will notice that this view also has certain things. Okay, instead of me just typing text, I'm using, for example, this translation method. So I put a label, and then depending on user's language, it will either display it in Chinese or Portuguese or French, doesn't matter, so it will display it in the right language. I can combine this in Laravel because this is not exactly HTML. I can combine in Laravel these script type of language. This is not any language. This is something that it's not exactly Laravel. Laravel took it from somebody else. Invented to make a shortcut. Okay. So instead of me using a long piece of code to load another file from this file, I can just say this blade extends that blade. Okay, so they call these blades instead of HTML pages, but they are pretty much HTML pages. So what Laravel is going to do when it needs to display this specific view, first it will call this one, do whatever it says there, and then it will do this bit, and then if it has something at the end, which probably does load some scripts, etc. So there's a page script where I load some scripts there. Any questions so far? Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat, so let me move on slowly, okay? So I just explained the basic structure of Laravel, where everything is, okay? And there are quite a few interesting things in VS Code that I just want to show you. If you are looking for anything, okay, I can right click on any folder and say find in a folder, and then type what I want to find, you know, so it will search for the text in the folder and it will find what I'm looking for very easy. Okay, so this is find, and I can then say even replace what you find with something else, so I can go through all the files and make a change. So if I want to replace some text, let's say this change avatar text, okay, I don't know in which file change avatar text is going to be, so let's find it. So change avatar, okay. So it found it in a file user profile PHP, and it says avatar is change avatar. So if I type something else here, then it should, in theory, change avatar test. If I reload this page, it should say change avatar test. Okay, so it's very easy. I don't have to go file by file, folder by folder. I can very easily find what I am looking for by just using this search functionality. Can also press Command P or Control P, you know, because this is another search, but it's more about let's find the file and extensions and stuff like that, you know. So you can do that. It's quite useful. I know what my name of the file is, but I have no idea in which one of these million folders is. So Control P will do that for you quite easy. Okay. So the last thing what I want to do before we take a break is tell you a little bit about the AppSource. Okay, so you guys installed hopefully AppSource some software, and you might see something like this, or you might have things here which are either working or not working. You might see them different. You might see the different look and feel. You know, some of you might have a theme like WXC installed. Some of you might not. Okay, so as you can see, there is a great flexibility. But this is the same code. Okay, so regardless of do you have Metronic theme or WXC theme or even some other themes, you should have the similar functionalities. Okay, so you should be able to either go to My Admin, and the menu can be on the right, on the top, or mobile menu, doesn't matter. This is fully responsive, so it should be sometimes like that. The AppSource, the way we envisaged it is that you will have one main application, and then you will be able to install as many applications as possible. Okay. So let's say you are running a business and you have a website which sells products to the customer or services. Then you would install the application My Ecom. If you have software developers like us do, then you would have application My Project, so you can manage your projects. If you have an application that needs to store files and edit files, etc., you would have application My Files. If you need to see your emails, My Emails, calendar, My Calendar, etc., so you get the point. So you can install as many applications as you want. But furthermore, we can build custom applications which are all connected to all the other applications. So the idea is that they are all connected. So for every single AppSource company that uses it, they will have their own version of AppSource which can be configured in any way they like it. Okay, so they choose the theme, they choose the language, but they also choose the applications they want to extend it. Okay, so each one of us might have a different list of applications here. So I have application called Blender in my menu. And some other people might not have the same applications, and that's all right. Okay, so these applications, what I like to do is in my folder, main folder, where I install all the code, I have my admin, which is AppSource and this Laravel stuff, but then I have in separate folder each application. Okay, so if I want to install the application that is a custom application, I will create a folder and I will put the code there. So it's separate from the main thing, but it is also connected. It will have its own database, but it's connected with the whole system because it's running on the same server, so these applications can communicate and make them much more useful than you would otherwise have. Okay, so these applications may or may not be in Laravel. They don't have to be in Laravel. They can use any other framework, but they also don't have to be PHP applications. They can be React Native or full Java applications. It doesn't matter. Whatever runs on your server, it can be Node.js application. It really doesn't matter. And quite often, those applications are exactly that, you know. So when we are talking about programming languages, you know, it is very interesting what is happening here. So Laravel is a framework. When you install Laravel on its own, it will come with a single page hello world. Okay, and then you need to add all the extensions. You know, if you want to log in users, you will add authorization extension, you know, bundle or whatever it's called, package, etc., etc. So you'll add the packages that you want. But AppSource itself is like all those packages added and all the code written. Okay, so you don't have to worry about styling the stuff. You know, all the themes are installed, all the languages are installed, all the translations are done. Then we have all the user management, role management, different types of stuff like file editing, meeting up people, chatting. So there's quite a lot that comes out of the box with AppSource itself. So it's basically Laravel, but actually applied with lots of things. But if that is not enough, then you can add additional applications. Let's see this My Venue application. So I hopefully, if it works, no, it doesn't. Wow. Okay. Oh my God. See, what I said earlier was on one of the sessions, if you enter a very small, no, I'm not even on the right place, password, then it's going to be much easier to log in to these things. My venue, there's a problem because what we did here, if you look at the bottom here of my screen, you will see that some great developer hard-coded the URL. So I'm on appsource.com, I put this here, and it says blenderworlds.com. So basically what happened, it just took me to a completely different website, okay? And of course I need credentials to log in there, so let me say, be a developer, we can look at the code and fix that and make sure that this works. So let's look at this one. So I go to invoices. Okay, so there's some website that is developed for the client, administration, products. Is this working? No, it goes back to Blender Worlds, as I said. Okay, so can't show you much there because it doesn't work right now. But the point is that this My Venue is application which is written specifically for one purpose, and that is to manage venues such as restaurants. So restaurants typically, or cafes or so on, have menus. Okay, they have menus of food, and they allow people to buy that food, you know, either through the website or through mobile application. So they manage invoices, ordering systems. They have those screens in kitchens and bars saying order number 153 is being prepared, etc., etc. So that is quite specific for certain types of customers. So as I said before, not every single customer will have this installed, and only if you are working on that project you will have it here. If you are not working on this project, you will not have it there, and you don't need to have it as such. All right. Now, what I also wanted to show you in the first thing, first lessons, is a little bit of HTML, JavaScript and CSS, okay? Because we are talking about PHP all this time. This is backend stuff, but what if I want to do something on the front end? Well, it is here in the resources. It's not language, it's my themes, and let's choose this worksheet theme, okay? So here I have CSS, okay, and you can see that there are many CSS files, okay? So for each page there are CSS files, so there are hundreds of them, okay? And by the same coin, if I go to JavaScript, boom, lots of JavaScript, then I go to scripts, then I go to this, then I go to that. As I said, there are hundreds and hundreds of JavaScript files and CSS files here. So typically when you start creating a website, you would start writing your basic CSS. You will say, okay, background is blue, main text color is white, you know, default font sizes, whatever. But we don't do that. That would be, again, very complex. So we typically use the themes which basically have examples and have solutions, the design solutions for everything. Okay, what does it mean for everything? For every single page. So if you Google Voxy or Metronic, these are a couple of themes that we are using, and you will see, if you explore what those themes look like, that they basically designed every single page. So it saves us a great amount of time to create those pages, because I'm just using the blocks and the designs and the color choices and so on that is required. So basically I don't have to painstakingly go, you know, box by box, div by div, and style each one. No, why would I do that? You know, unless there's a client who specifically wants that, has also a theme that is absolutely spot on for them, I don't have to do it. Okay, and in that case, all of these scripts, CSS scripts that we have, I don't need to edit. All the functionality that we are seeing here, such as this one, opening and closing that, you know, these things which expand and so on, if they are JavaScripts, these little things here, notifications. There are many JavaScript things which are executing here. This drawing graphs and updating the number of views. So there's lots of JavaScript. That's already written. This thing, this graph here, is using one of these graphs, maybe exactly this one. Okay, so basically what we did here is we chose really good themes which have many pages and examples that we can quickly use to put the page together, you know, which will look professionally designed. But we can of course improve it. But the thing is that what I don't want to do is don't want to change stuff in these two folders that I just showed you, CSS and JavaScript. Okay, why? Well, if I change CSS, just say up CSS, and I say blue, I change this color to a different blue. Okay, so I change it to that. Okay, and then I look at my page, and then everything is in that color. Great, problem solved. The problem is that every other page that uses this CSS will also change the color to red. And that's not what I wanted. I just wanted it to do it on my specific page. Okay, so this is where I say to you guys, don't change this global CSS, the ones for the team itself, because you can change that locally. Okay, so you can change that for either group of pages, or you can change it for a single page, or you can change it for the single element. Okay, so that depends where you want to go. And same thing with JavaScript. We have hundreds of JavaScripts here for different purpose, but I will load the ones that I need on all pages. By the default, these are the ones which open close these menus and put these little things so I can scroll to the top, etc. But if I need a specific JavaScript on this page, which is like this graph, I'm just going to load it on that page. So I'm not going to change this in main JavaScript files which are here. So this chart that I just found by accident, I don't know where it's gone now, chart, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to use it, but the changes that I'm going to make are inside my page itself. So if I go back to one of these pages, views, I think we use profile blade. So it's interesting that it loads layouts, master layout. So layouts, master layout. And in master layout, you can see the HTML. And then it says include head. Include head. And this is all the icons like favicons that are loaded. So when you look at my page here, it loads some sort of favicon. So basically that's and then it gives all these meta tags, So I have this, but this is all on this every page. Okay, it doesn't change. So this is why, because it doesn't change, it's kind of like a part of the page in PHP that I can combine stuff like this. So I can put my page, my content as a page, but then it says extends this layout, and this layout will have all the components that are required. So this is how I make all the pages look exactly the same. I don't have to copy paste these banners on the top, menus on the left. I just include those files and I just focus on the content of my page. Why is my page different? So the user page will extend the layout, as I said, this one master layout blade, like many others. It will include head, it will include left bar, top bar, notifications, and then it will render the content of the page, and after that it will do all the custom footers and scripts that it needs to do. If my profile page requires additional things, then it can load additional things here after I load them. First I load additional CSS, and then I load at the end additional JavaScripts that this page requires that makes it different. On my profile page, if you go to the profile here, one of the things, if I want to change my avatar, I have this thing where I can drag and drop my thing. This is called the drop zone, but I don't have the drop zone on any other page. So here you will see that I'm using drop zone, and more drop zone, and then I have some CSS for that specific drop zone. There you go, that is defined there. But I'm using the default settings because I'm just calling it for the theme, okay, because I'm happy how this drop zone looks, and if I call the same CSS on the other page where I need a drop zone, it will look exactly the same. It will not look differently, so I get that consistency that, I don't have to even define it. I just say load the CSS for it, and there it is. Of course, CSS is something that is has many new iterations. It has more intelligent CSS, let's call it that way. It has SCSS and all the other stuff. So we support that, you know, SAS, this sort of stuff. You can compile the CSS into smaller files and bundle them together. But we are going to talk about that later when we go into the front-end development. But if you are interested right now to say, okay, how do I make a change? How do I change the color? How do I change the text? How do I change how it looks like? What does it say? I think now you can play with it and change it. Okay, and the fact that you change it, you are changing it only on your computer. You're not changing it on anybody else's computer or the website itself. Okay, so this is quite safe to do. That's why we went to this trouble of building local environments. So whatever changes and new features you build, they will be on your computer. Okay. The reason why we use Git is because then we have versions. So every time when you save and commit these changes, you have like a snapshot, so you can go back if things go wrong. Okay, and then you can also push those changes on a remote server, so you can, if everything goes right, you can share it with everybody else. So it's quite safe for you on your computer to do everything, change it, break it, doesn't matter. You can go back if you want to, and you can also, as long as you don't push it to everybody for everybody else, you know, we are absolutely fine. All right, so I will stop here. I think it's exactly 1 hour. So 3-minute break, 4-minute break, guys, and then we will start talking about object-oriented programming. So if you have any questions, again, it's a good chance to type those so I can answer them when we get back. So talk to you in 3-4 minutes. Bye for now. So I should be back. Hope you enjoyed your little break. Now we're going to talk about object-oriented programming. And yes, I will stick some nasty beats next time when all these pauses are. So you make suggestions here, guys. But object-oriented programming is very important. And I want to talk about concepts of objects. What the hell is an object? Okay? Everything is an object, okay? That is my water, that's an object. That's my mouse, that's an object. We know what the objects are in the real world, okay? We don't need to define what the object is in the real world. And you know that this object is not the only mouse like this in the world. There are millions of them. So I can have hundreds of these different mouses, or plural is mouses, mices if it's a little rodent. So this is mouses. Okay, there can be millions of these objects in the world. So we can have a mouse that belongs to Luana or Eileen or Thomas or Andre. So this is Andre's mouse. Okay, so it has some sort of property. We know how it's different than Thomas's mouse. It's exactly the same mouse, but it's slightly different, okay? Why? Because mine may be a little bit dirty or scratched or more used, or the batteries are, not charged properly and so on. Maybe it's older, So every object has different properties, okay? So while they are exactly the same, they might have different properties. It can be a different color. And then each object has some functionality. So this object will move my arrow on my screen. And if I press this button, it will click and do whatever that it needs to do. But it has this little thing on the side, which will do something else, like scroll the browser and so on. So it has some functionality, okay? And this functionality is the same functionality that Thomas's mouse have, or anybody else's mouse, So as we can see, the functionality can be common, but maybe I can customize this, okay? So I can add additional functionality to my mouse that Thomas doesn't have. So let's say if I click this button, my computer shuts down. I don't know why would I do that, but it's personalized in a way to me. Okay, so this objects, we understand what they are. They are very similar things. Okay, and they kind of belong to the same family, because Thomas might not have this mouse. Okay, he can have a different mouse. Maybe it's the same manufacturer, so they belong to the Logitech mouse family, or maybe it's a different manufacturer, I don't know, Razer, whatever not. Okay, so fine, but they all belong to the family of mice or mouse or mouses, whatever not. Okay, so there is a, when I say object mouse, it's quite general. Okay, so I expect it to be at least able to move left and right and click. Okay, so that's the basic of the object of the computer mouse. But I can put another object like human interface devices, okay? So mice is a human interface device, but so is that drawing tablet, so is the keyboard, okay? So they all interact with users. So again, they have something in common that, differentiates them from this. This doesn't control my computer in any way. That's my water. So as I say, objects, there can be millions of them. They have properties and they have functionalities, and we typically associate them in some sorts of similarity groups, and they can have a parent group or child group and so on and so on. So that's what objects kind of are, okay? But when people designed this mouse, what they created is a blueprint. Okay, so somebody draw on a piece of paper or computer screen the blueprint exactly how this mouse is going to work. Okay, so this blueprint is representation. It's used to make all these different mouses, but it's not the mouse itself. Okay, it's a blueprint, it's a scheme, it's a diagram how to make a mouse. Okay, so while mouses are real objects and can have many of them, all mouses like this have the same blueprint. They are made of same blueprint. Okay, so there's one blueprint which makes all million of these mice. Okay, and then later I can create different properties and different functionalities, but the blueprint, the base blueprint, is the same. So we have to understand that blueprint is not a physical object, and there is typically one of them. In our code, the blueprint is class. So when we say class, this word here, that's our blueprint. Okay, that's what makes all the objects. So when you read this code, and I'm just going to delete for the time being this, and I'm going to delete that just to keep it simple. This is the simplest class. Okay, this is not an object. This code doesn't do anything at all. This is a blueprint. This is a scheme which is sitting in some drawer, doesn't do anything. Okay? It doesn't do anything. Unless in some other part of the code, let's say controller, I decide to do something with it. Okay? So the first thing that I can do with it is make it from a blueprint. I can make a real object. I can make 1, I can make 2, I can make 500. It doesn't matter, 5,000. So how do I do that? Well, typically I say something like new, not here, but I say new user. Okay? So this new user will create an instance of the class user. So it will use the blueprint user and create an object out of it. What does it do with that object? So it would be very useful if I assign it to the variable. Okay, as I say, I'm not going to type this here inside the user class. I'm going to type this inside the controller. So this is what I would do. Now, of course, it's complaining because I'm typing it at the wrong place. So this will create one instance of the class blueprint user, and whatever that object is will be stored in this variable x. Okay, so that is how I make the objects. Okay, and I can make object y and so on and so on. So when you log into the website, you are typically a user. So we have a class user which will have certain properties. Those certain properties will be your username, your password, your first name, your last name, your email, so you get the point. Okay, so all the users are same. We can use the same blueprint for everybody. And then when Thomas logs in, I create an instance of the class user and assign it to some variable somewhere which will be Thomas. That's the user which represents Thomas. Okay, and then Andre logs in, I create another one, there is a user called Andre. And then, I don't know, Mary logs in, boom, user Mary. All right, so I can have as many of these users and they have the same properties. So what I can do, for example, is says, hey, all users send notification, and then it will find all the users that I have, it will find all the objects that I have and send them a notification, say, hello, welcome to my website, for example. So let's look at this class, and I will is this the best example that I can have? Let me undo this. Okay. So, one thing which is very important, what I already kind of hinted and mentioned, is that one class can be part of a group of classes. So one type of blueprint can be a group of blueprints. What do I mean by that? I said this Logitech mouse belongs to the parent group of classes or class, which is called mouse. Okay, so I can say here, not here in this particular one, but I'll just type it here, class Logitech mouse extends mouse. Okay, so I can have another blueprint somewhere here which is called mouse, and in that blueprint I can define properties. Goes left, goes right, goes up, goes down, has a left click and right click button. That's what every mouse has. Okay, so I define that in the class mouse. And in the class Logitech mouse, when I said it extends mouse, basically what it means, it automatically gets all those properties. So Logitech mouse, I don't have to tell it that it goes left, right, up and down, it has two buttons, left and right click, because I extended the one which already does that. I inherited all those properties, and I can use them as I see fit, and I can even override them, but that's a different story. So the only thing what I have to do with this Logitech mouse is say something which it typical mouse doesn't have. So I say, hey, it has a public variable, or it has a variable, let's say scroll wheel, and that will be, doesn't matter. So I define just what makes this one different than the typical mouse. And then I can have a Microsoft mouse, which also extends mouse, which will have two scroll wheels. Or I can have a gaming mouse, which will extend the mouse, which will have nice, colorful lights. Okay, and so on. So basically, this system of classes works quite well. So I can extend the objects and inherit everything that that object has, so I don't have to write it again and again, and then add additional stuff that I want to. So I can add additional properties, but I can also add additional functionalities. Okay, so this class user extends this class authenticable, because users has to be logged in. But it also has these additional functionality. Okay, so for example, I can delete a user, or I can update the user, or I can get the apps which that user can use, and so on, or get what's the role of that user. So this is the functionalities that only user has. Authenticable doesn't have those functionalities because I extended it. Okay. But hear me out now. This is going to sound crazy. I have the class or blueprint Logitech mouse. That extends class mouse, which extends class peripherals, for example. So it's all computer peripherals, which extends class computers, which extends class hardware or digital electronic devices, which extends class devices, which extends class manufactured goods, which extends class items, which extends class solid items or something like that, So I'm just inventing this as I'm going along. Okay, so basically you can see the hierarchy. But there is one at the top of every hierarchy. It doesn't matter, do I do cars? Okay, so I have car Volkswagen, which, Polo, I don't know, which is part of Volkswagen Group, which is part of German cars, which is part of just cars, which is part of vehicles, which is part of items, again, you can see this hierarchy, and it keeps going up, you know. So a part of vehicles, I can have trucks and buses and ships and so on, you know, and then divide that. But where does it all end? What's on the top of this hierarchy? Okay, it's a thing called object. Okay, so every single thing is an object. Object has no properties and no functionality, but everything extends that. Okay, so this is what's, you know, on the top we have objects. So every single class that you define, you can invent, and so on, extends the top thing on the top, which is object. Okay, so object, you can assign any properties. If you assign properties to object, then every single class in the whole hierarchy will have that property. So we don't do that typically, you know, but as I said, this is object-oriented programming. It means that there is a thing called object, which then it has some sort of sub-objects, and they have sub-objects, and they have sub-objects, and so on and so on. But objects don't have to be real. Okay, we talked about cars and computer mouses and stuff like that. What if I say, you know, unicorn? You know, there's no real unicorn. Or what if I say object called clicka-clacka? Okay, doesn't matter, something that I just invented. I can invent any type of object. It doesn't have to be object in a real world. I can make an object called black hole. I have lots of black holes. You know, I can give them properties of the real black holes, or I can have a pink holes, which have completely different properties and so on. No puns here and second meanings. So, as you can see, this allows us to represent basically anything that exists in a world, anything at all, and even everything which doesn't exist in the world. Okay, so we can create objects which don't exist, we can simulate them and see how they react with the objects that exist. So this object-oriented programming gives us huge power, okay, to do whatever the hell we want. We can describe any type of situation. And then we can have as many of those objects, we can create as many of those objects. So if I have an object called, I don't know, planet, I can say make 1,000 planets. So if I have universe, make 1,000 universe. So if I have the whole cosmos or whatever, make 500 million of them, you know, who cares, okay? And then see how they interact with each other. And they can have different functionalities, different things, you know, so the key that I'm trying to explain to you is this concept when you are thinking about objects, you are thinking as a human being. So when I say user Thomas or user Andre, you imagine this, okay? When you type the code, there is no this, there is no flash, there is no beard or whatever, no, there's just a code, which is not real me, of course, it's some sort of blueprint description of what this is. Okay, so what I do, if I'm a user of the website, I'm going to say class user, and then we imagine some, you know, black cutout of the user. We'll say, okay, it has the properties name, last name, surname, etc., etc. Any questions? Oh, I don't see the chat anymore. I don't know where it's gone. Doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to do here to explain to you guys is what people typically make a mistake is they confuse the class and the object because it's the same thing. No, it's not. Class is a blueprint where I define what my objects might be. But those objects might end up being slightly different than classes because they have the life of their own. Once I create them, they will execute the code which is written in the class, but they might get additional things later on, you know, such as my mouse object can be scratched after I create a brand new mouse. Okay, so we have to understand that we are dealing with objects all the time, but we are programming classes. That's the difference, okay? So when you program class, that's not an object. So what can I do with this, okay? Why do we need this? Is this just PHP? Well, the last answer is not. Of course, it's not just PHP. This exists in pretty much every other programming language. It might be called slightly different, but you have it in JavaScript, you have it in pretty much every programming language. You have the functions, properties, classes, and you create the objects, and then you do whatever it is, and it's the same principle, the same hierarchy, top object, and all the objects are instantiated. So, I'm going to try to find quickly one, not this, yeah, this one has it, okay? When I create a new object, every time when I create a new object, this is built in, okay? We have this function construct, okay? And again, I have it in every language. So when I create the object, this is the function that gets executed on creation of the object. Okay, so if there is something that needs to happen when the object is created, I put it in this function here. So in this case, apps, when I create a new app, I don't need to do anything with it specifically, so this function is empty. And I can also remove it, and that will be fine. And there is also a function deconstruct. So these are some functions that are built in into PHP and the classes that we have. But they are also built in pretty much any other programming language, okay? They might be slightly differently named, okay? And you can see this construct is called with 2 underscores, just to highlight it. This is kind of built in function, so you know that it's not your personal function, that you wrote it yourself. So every function that I write belongs to this class. So if I say public function users, so class apps, and all the objects that I created, all the little applications that I created will have this function which I can call from the controller where I created it, okay? But if I extend this, or somebody else, some other developer extends it, okay, they will also get all my functions, okay? So if I create a class little apps, which extends big apps, this one here, okay, then that little apps will also have function users, okay? Unless I say, well, you can't have it. Okay, so this was before, tell me, is this a private, can I extend it, not, and so on, you know. So public, of course, means anybody can use it and anybody can call it. So there are modifiers between the functions, you know, which I don't have to say. So if I omit them in most programming languages, that's fine. You know, it's a public function, so any controller who has access to this can call it, and any class which wants to extend it will get it. So I have a control over that, okay? But to call this function, this is the key thing. I can't call this function in the controller. So this function users, and this is apps. Okay, let's find the one controller. Okay, app HTTP controllers. Let's just use any controller. Okay, so see, it doesn't matter here. I say apps, and doesn't matter like this user. Okay, this doesn't work because apps is a class. It doesn't exist. It's a blueprint. I have to make an instance of this class. Okay, so I have to say, okay, something like this. New app is new app, boom, boom. Okay, so what this is going to say is going to create a new object, okay, called new app. And then I can say users of this app is new app users. Okay, and I need to put this. Okay, equals. Okay, so I can only access the functionality functions that are written in a class if I'm using the object. So this new app is an object. How do I know it's an object? I know because I created it here using a keyword new. What type of object it is? It's a type of app object. Okay, and what is this? This is whatever this function uses return. Okay, I can also do access properties of this app. So let's say name is new app name. So this will find the name of the app that I just created. Okay, and assign it to the variable name. All right, so I can only work with objects. Okay, I cannot work with classes. I can't just access the single class and say give me its users, give me this, give me that. I have to make an object, and then on that object I perform action. Okay, so let's say I have 500 Mercedes cars and they are all objects. Okay, so what I typically do if I want to see their colors or count how many black and white ones are, I have to go through this list of objects and check their property color, and if it's red, count red ones, if it's black, count black ones, and so on. So I have to go through the objects, but I don't go through the class unless I make a class static. Okay, so I can modify the app. It's a static, so in that case it means that I can actually use it with some of its functionality without making an object out of it. But that's very rare, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Okay, but I just want to make sure that I'm speaking precise. So pretty much most classes you can't use functionality of them. There is exception, and that is fine. But what are classes? This is a little bit confusing, especially for the new developers, okay? Because I have a file on my computer, okay? And it's called user.php. That's a file on my computer. I can find it in browser, in a file explorer, okay? I can find this file. So the name of the file I called user. And then inside the file name user, I have piece of code or text which says class user. And then when I'm using that class user, I can say user is new user, okay, and user friends is user or I can say something like even worse, users user, okay? So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about naming conventions, okay? It gets very quickly very confusing, okay? So when I say user, do I mean that user, this user, this user, this user, this user, this user, or this file user, or probably 500 other files user that I have on my computer I'm not even aware of, okay? Because if you Control P and search for user, you will probably find hundreds of them. So the naming gets very confusing. Which user is my user? Which one is Andrew? Which one is Thomas? I'm completely and utterly confused. So let's just talk about it for a second, okay? I can call this whatever I want to call it, okay? So none of this has to be user. So this can be called, I don't know, penguin. This can be called test. This can be Thomas's friends. This can be called a big list of crap. Okay, fine. So now I have better names. Oh, I think so. No, they're not better, because when you say big list of crap, I don't imagine people or people's friends or stuff like that, you know, so it's confusing. Okay, so I do have to have something which is descriptive, user friends, so that probably is somebody's friends, okay? So I have to use these same words for different things, and the computer even complains if I mix them up, okay? So I have to be very precise, okay? So typically what happens if I name a file in PHP user and I say class Thomas, it's going to probably complain. So as I said, it gets very confusing very easy, but there is a certain syntax, okay? So you see this user is capital U and it's after the new, okay? So we know this is a class, okay? However, friends is not a class, okay? Because it's not after the word new, it's after the arrow, okay? Let's put user name here, okay? So this is syntax, and this is slightly different in any programming language, but it follows pretty much the same rule, okay? So if it has these curly brackets, normal brackets, then it's a function, okay? So this, I just say it's a class, but it's calling a function, okay? So I didn't lie to you, it is a class, it is this class user, but the function is that one which we don't see here, it's hidden, we don't have to specify it, but the function that it's calling is this construct default function, okay? So when I'm creating a new user or new app, I'm actually calling its construct method to make it, okay? But if this class user extends some other class, it also I'm calling that class's construction method. And if this class extends another class, I'm calling that class's construction method, okay? So it is some functionality there, so this is why it has brackets in PHP, so it makes sense, even if it's confusing. So if it goes under word new and it's like this in green, and you know, typically we put capital letter, you know, just a convention so we can distinguish these things. This is a class and I'm making the instance of that class. If I'm using the arrow and this thing, I'm calling a function. If I use the arrow without the thing, I'm accessing a property, okay? And this dollar here in PHP means it's a variable. In some other programming languages, you have to type var. In some, you don't have to do even that. You just put the name of the variable. Okay. So it will get a little bit time to use to recognize what the hell is a function, what is the method, what is the property, what is a class, what is, and I will drill you guys in quite a lot to tell me what the hell is which part of the code, because you have, in order to learn how to program, you have to understand what it says, and you have to understand what it says, you have to recognize what it is. Okay, so here I'm just giving you examples of some code which was typically used for classes, okay, where I make a new instance of the class and then access some of its functionality and properties, and this is typically how you would write it in PHP. Few more things for today, okay? I mentioned that I can have many files called user.php. And trust me, I do have hundreds of them probably on the big projects, okay? And they have different functionality. They are not the same user. Or they might be, I don't know. They might be duplicates. Okay, but how do I make sure that computer uses this one? Okay, well, this is what we are talking about. Okay, in every programming language, it's not just PHP, you have a thing called namespace. Okay, so all of these files are in app models. Okay, so all of these apps share the same namespace. All of these will say namespace app models. Okay, so if I go to apps, it says app models. If I go to user, it is app models. This is the full name of this class. Okay, it's app models user. So it kind of matches the structure of the folders that I have, but it doesn't have to, but it's more intelligent if it does. So if I have a user file somewhere else in some other folder, it will have a different namespace, so I can differentiate between this user and that user by using its full name. What does it mean? So it means that I could have put here new app model or models, whatever it was, /user. Okay, and that will work fine because I'm just using its full name, because I can also in this case use some other user. I can have two different definitions, two different blueprints for my users. I don't know why would I do that, but let's say we have some sort of website which connects people who give jobs, like employers and employees. So I would have two different types of users on my platform which have completely different type of properties and functionality. So if I'm stupid, I would call both of them users and confuse myself. If I name them properly, I will call them employees and employers, so I wouldn't have that problem. But somebody else might have that in some other part of the code. Or remember when I talk about these plugins, the bundles that we have, maybe they will define this as well, So it can be quite often that you need to specify the full name of the class in order for PHP to understand which specific file you want to open. Okay, so I can put this is fine, or if I put this, it's also fine. But this is not going to work, because if there are multiple users, which as I said there are, is going to get confused. Which one of these files you want me to open? PHP is not going to go through every single one because there are hundreds of thousands of these files to look for it. So you have to say use app models user and then capital thing, and then I can use user like this, so it knows that this user, this is its full name of our class that we are talking about. So if I don't put this, I have to use the full name so we know which one we are talking about. Okay, that's very important. So see here, I'm using the full name because I didn't put use that and that. Both are fine, you know, so whatever you want, it's very easy. So the namespace of the classes is quite important because that help us with the naming, because we can have duplicates or triplicates of the same name. Fine, we just put the full name and then we can distinguish which one is which. If we want to use specific one, we can either put the whole list or we can put its name here. 1 second. So see this authenticatable or whatever it is, oh my god, it's a horrible word. This is this thing, okay? So there is some sort of way to jump into this this one, but in theory I can, I don't know, was a shortcut or I don't have it installed. So this is inside my vendor. I can search for it for 1,000 years, but I want to say, where is my user? Okay, so let's do this, Ctrl P, user.php. Okay, as you can see, I have many users.php already installed. Okay, the one that I'm looking for is my admin vendor Laravel framework source Illuminati foundation auth. It's probably one of these, or auth models. This, no, it's not this one, you know, so I can find this user. So this Ctrl P is quite useful. So foundation is here, auth is here, and then I have this user. Okay, so this is a user. So this class user extends that class user. What I said before, this class user, so this user which has a different namespace, so I can say this is my one that I created, this is one which is created by some vendor. Okay, this one also extends another class, which is Illuminati Database Eloquent Model, which probably extends another class, and so on and so on. So it's very hard in big projects like this, because you would, especially if you are used to standard HTML programming where one page has everything that is there, and you can also put CSS and so on, so everything that you program is on the same size. In complex applications, this is often the case. Part of the codes are sprinkled in ridiculous folders which have no connection to each other. Okay, so if you want to see where is the function that you are actually calling, it might be in this model. So I can go to Illuminati database, eloquent. Here's model. Okay, and you can see that this class model has quite a lot of things, So when I say user, I have all this functionality, but I also get all this functionality, and then I get all this functionality. So my code is spread around. It's very hard to figure out, especially for the beginners, that, why is it not all in one place? Remember the pyramid, remember the object-oriented programming. There's an object and extends. So if we want to create a real world and representation of the real world, things are connected, okay? And, so it's something hard to put your mind about it, but I'm trying to explain it and give you a few examples of how it all works and where to find it and how to find it, okay? So, if I go to my backup manager and I have this new user, I can actually call any of these functions. Clear boot model, so I can call this function. Whatever that function does, it's public, so it should work. So if I go here to wherever I was typing this example, I can say now user that will work. Don't know what will it do, but it will work. Because our variable user contains the data. It has a user as a model, as an object, which is based on a class user, which extends class whatever, another user, this user, which extends the model, and then in that model there is this function, and this function will do those two things, and ta-da. Okay, so that gives me the power that I don't have to write this code again and again and again. It's already available for me. So that's what makes these things so powerful. And so while I'm waiting for your questions, I see that somebody says we newbies don't have models folder and so on. I want you to learn project on a problem-based learning, okay? Problem-based learning means that I'm not going to start from scratch and say, let's all write hello world, okay, and slowly build, and after 2.5 years we'll have, maybe something. No, we jump into already built applications, and we have to understand what it is, okay? So this is a real application which has a real models and so on, and gives you opportunity throughout this course and so on to actually learn what the models are and to change them and implement them and be able to use them comfortably, because we never start writing from scratch. We never start on a blank piece of paper. I have to build a new website for a big client, index HTML. I don't do that. I input thousands of variables, thousands of packages and frameworks and stuff like that, which I know that I will use, so to speed up the process, So as a programmer, we already start from 80% of stuff done. Okay, and you have to understand when you jump into something like this, okay, I want to do that, where do I find it, what do I need to do? So these are the concepts that you need to know. So this is why I didn't start give you 3 lines of code and say, there you go, this is easy for you. I made it extremely hard, and you will learn on this as you go along. So yes, you do have models and vendors and CSS and themes and all the stuff that we talked about. Any other questions, guys? Type them in if you have them, and if not, can definitely ask later. So where is the folder models? Well, you might not have it. Older versions of Laravel didn't have a folder called models, so depends on which version of AppSource you pulled. These classes, client, user, and so on, and sessions may not be organized in folder called models. This is, optional, but you do have all these classes here. Maybe you don't have favicon generator because if you have older version, there was no favicon generator. So it might be slightly different, but most of these you should have regardless of which version you use. Any other questions? Okay, somebody likes approach. Well, wait till I give you homework. Okay, then you will see is it good or not. So for the homework, please remember I talked about debugging. Okay, so I want you to try to install Xdebug. Okay, and you have to remember what I said. It has to be on 3 different places. I showed you what it needs to be, and that gotcha about version 2, version 3 because they changed the port. So install Xdebug. Okay, I want you to install the plugin also for the database. Okay, so you can see your database. As I say, this one I just need to restart code, so it will do something. It told me some pop-up I need to install it so I can see where it is. But also I can find it here inside the AppSource if I didn't break the code, which I did, of course, and it gave me some sort of error, and wherever Control Z. So hopefully that will, fix it. Okay, so what I also want you to do is to be able to log into this, okay, and then make few changes. Okay, so I want you to make changes, okay, on the login screen. Okay, so I want you to change this picture, and I want you to change this text. Okay, and I know some of you, I asked them this task before and they did it. Okay, but I want you to make sure that when you change this text, you change it in translation file, and when you change this image, okay, the image is uploaded in a proper folder and is stored in a proper folder. Okay, so I don't want you to fetch the image from the internet, because I can put this as a URL so it will load it. I want this image to be stored in your local folder and access directly, just like every other resource like CSS or this image and so on. Okay, because if it's on the same computer, it's going to be slightly faster. Okay, so Xdebug, change few things on the login page. Okay, and that's it. So hopefully we are going to be properly set up for the next session, because the next session we are going to go much more details about this object-oriented programming. Okay, we talked a little bit about classes and objects, but we have this model, view, controller. We touched upon it, but I want to kind of give you a little bit more details. Is it fine to hard code it? Yep, do it by the hook or by the crook at this stage, but I'm a great opponent of hard coding, okay? Especially the URL links, because you saw what happened to me earlier. I wanted to open the Blender app and my venue app, and the link was hard coded, so it jumped to the completely different site, and I couldn't show it to you, so I didn't think about that. So if everything is not hard coded, then we are having much better time. So if you can avoid hard coding stuff, well, except the image name, of course, because that's how the hell you know what's called. That would be brilliant. Any other questions? No. Good. Okay. Well, keep them coming. In the chat, you know, after this call, doesn't matter. Ping me directly if you need me. That's fine. You know where to find me, guys. So again, thank you so much for your attention. We finished dead on time. So have a lovely evening. Now I'm going to get some medicines and stuff like that. So hopefully my cold goes away. But good night for now. Bye bye.